you for everyone who's joined us this afternoon for what is the penultimate lecture in the Cambridge Conservation Initiative seminar series for the autumn term. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Thomas Worthington, and I'm a research associate in the Conservation Science Group in the Department of Zoology. It's my great pleasure today to host today's speaker, Professor Rashid Sumaila from the University of British Colombia. Before we get started, I just have a couple of housekeeping announcements. So during the talk, can you please keep your camera off to sort of reduce any background distractions, and mute your microphone so we don't get any background noise. At the end of the presentation, we will hopefully have time for questions. So if you could please keep track of them during the talk, and we'll move to questions at the end. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Rashid Sumaila, who is a professor and Canada Research Chair in Interdisciplinary Oceans and Fisheries Economics. He is the director of both the Fisheries Economic Research Unit and the Ocean Canada Partnership at the Institute of Oceans and Fisheries at the University of British Columbia, and he's also appointed to the UBC School for Public Policy and Global Affairs. His research focuses on bioeconomics, marine ecosystem valuation, and the analysis of global issues such as fishery subsidies, illegal fishing, climate change, plastic pollution, oil spill. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and recipient of the prestigious 2017 Volvo Environmental Prize. His research and leadership in the field has led him to be invited to address the UN Rio +20 meeting, the World Trade Organization, the White House, Canadian Parliament, African Union, and our own British House of Lords. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that much of Professor Sumaila's research resonates with activities that we do here in the Cambridge Conservation Initiative, the research that I do myself included. And today's talk is entitled Interdisciplinary Ocean and Fisheries Economics, Evaluating the Potential Benefits of Implementing a 30 by 30 target for marine protection. And with that, I would like to pass it over. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom, for the introduction. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to get the chance to kind of give a seminar to a special group like the one you have at Cambridge, looking at conservation. And I like this because I think with conservation, you just cannot get away from interdisciplinarity. And this has been my way of doing economics. So I'm happy to get the chance to do this, and look forward to sharing ideas two ways, you know, from me to you and you to me. Yeah, so this is the plan here. I have to get it to move. Yeah, so I start off by saying a few things about interdisciplinary ocean and fisheries economics, and because actually I don't think this is a discipline by itself. I'm just trying to grow something and emphasizing the interdisciplinarity. So I'll give you a few slides about what I mean, and in so doing, I also explain what I do, right, as an opener. Then I go into why do we need to protect the ocean, the environment in general. I know many of you are not concentrating your research on the ocean, on ocean issues. You do stuff on land, but actually the principles and the ideas I'm going to discuss here apply to also to land issues, terrestrial issues. So economics of ocean protection. So that is the general theme, and I made it broader. It's about 30 by 30, but it's also in general about protection. So, and I want to end up with financing, because as you know, no matter how good your ideas are, no matter how important what you want to do is, if you don't have the funding, nothing really happens. So I'll get to bring in new work we have done, and which was launched on the October 22nd. So in terms of interdisciplinarity, essentially, basically what it means is I am an economist, but what I really enjoy, the environment I enjoy working is working with colleagues from other disciplines. academic and non-academic. I also enjoy working with the public, with policy makers, with indigenous populations around the world and in Canada. So it's just an idea that economics on its own cannot solve our problems. We need to work together. No discipline alone can do it, especially if you're thinking conservation. So that is where this is coming. And then when you zero in on economics, you can divide economists into two groups, those who are what I will call public economists, so people who do public economics in some sense, and then those who do firm or company economics. I'm talking about the business economics, you know. So, and there's a difference between the two. Most of us do a bit of both, but you'll find us more concentrated on one or the other. So a firm economist is somebody who is working for a company and their task is to maximize the profit for the company or the benefits, whatever the company defines to be its objective. But if you're a public economist, you are looking at the whole system, the whole society. Companies are part of your analysis, but they are not the only ones. And their profit alone is not the only thing you look at. You look at society at large. So if I'm a company and I'm making lots of money, what other things do I do that may be positive or negative to third parties in the society that I'm not taking into account? So it's broad economics in that sense. And in general, I see the economics I do and try to propagate and push and as public economics and also as interdisciplinary, as I explained. So this is my favorite model. I just love this model because it just boils down everything to the basics. And of course, you can expand this. You can. This is huge. If you want to expand this, you can. But when you boil it down, this is the basics of how people relate to nature, the ocean, and the environment in general. There are two things we do, essentially, as I see it. One is we go to the environment, we go to the ocean, we take all the good things, the things we like, the fish, the oil, the gas, the diamond, whatever, we pull them out of the environment into our economy. And we do all the stuff we do in the society, economics, we do culture, we do social stuff. So that is the economy in a very broad sense. And once we do that, you know what else we do? We generate waste. We generate carbon. We generate plastic. All the debris. Where do they go to? They go to the environment. So from the environment, good things come. To the environment, bad things go. And so all that we do, conservation people, economists, psychologists, whoever works with the relationship between people and nature, I think this model captures virtually everything. You know, it's not safe to say it captures everything. So I say virtually, because you take the fish in there, how you process it, how you share it, how you distribute it, whether you use it, if you're an indigenous person in Canada, whether you use it for potluck, for society, for social stuff. Everything is in there. How you distribute and so on. Who makes the money? Who takes the fish? Who is starving? All are in here. You can open this up. But the key thing is we take the good stuff and we pump out the bad stuff. And if we don't do this taking and pumping out wisely, we destroy the source of the good thing. See, so even if you don't care about biodiversity, you should care about this, because you cannot destroy the fish stocks and say you still want fish. You want fisheries jobs. You want seafood. No, if there's no fish, you don't get that. So that is a very basic model, and as an interdisciplinary economist, I'm very acutely aware of this tight connection between environment and economy and society. Some of my fellow economists don't seem to understand this. It's like the economy can float in where, I don't know, the air is also the environment, right? So there's no place to hide the economy. You got to deal with the environment, and we either deal wisely or we mess up ourselves. Another thing that really my interdisciplinarity makes me think of is trying to work at the intersection of disciplines. So you bring economics, you bring ecology. I've worked with philosophers, I've worked with artists, you know, with songwriters. We brought songwriters, artists, and ecologists, social scientists here at UBC. and we did some amazing stuff. Whilst you're talking, somebody is just trying to draw what you're trying to say, and then the music is created. A whale is in the ocean, is singing, or under threat, and so on. How does it? What kind of noises does it make? So amazing stuff. So you have to embrace diversity in ideas and approaches and perspective if you want to be a good conservationist. I think so. A good scientist show genuine understanding for the approaches and methods of disciplines other than mine, in this case, economics, other than yours. So I cannot go into an interdisciplinary group and say, hey, come on, guys, all that matters is making profit. I want to just maximize profit. Somebody would tell you, no, that is not the only thing. There are people who are starving and we have to think about it. You know, so you got to be open to that. And you have to be aware that there are multiple ways of approaching the problem. And you just have to love divergent thinking. And this is one of the things that makes me love this profession of ours. You go in, you say something, somebody say, hey, watch it. Are you really sure? You are forced to think, and actually you start becoming unsure, right? Isn't that cool? So that's another aspect of what I really enjoy. And I don't enjoy just doing economics for the sake of it or the theory or so I put a lot of effort to get the information out to people who can use it, to the public. I mean, we do studies on subsidies, and people call me on the street here in Vancouver and say, Rashid, you mean we are using our tax money to destroy the fish stocks that so many people depend on? I say, yeah, that's what your governments are doing, right? The people have to know this. You don't just publish and put it on the shelf and go to sleep. So these are elements of some of the things I do, the public facing part of the work. The first picture you see here is the WTO. This was Pascal Lamy. He was then the DG, the Director General of the, we did a big report on subsidies, quantifying it. And he got a copy, he read it, we went there and had a discussion with him, he had questions. This is the CEO of Oceana. And this is another thing. If you're in conservation, you have to have allies. You have to have people who really see the value of your work. So we do our subsidies report. Oceana says, my God, this is good stuff. We have to get it moving. So Oceana takes it, they publicize it, they get it on the table of people who matter. So collaboration is important. Here, this is a talk I'm giving at the US Congress. And we did a paper on how rebuilding US fish stock, depleted fish stock, can really bring in multiples of benefit. So somehow this report, I think is an NRDC that saw the report, they loved it, they got it to the highest up, and I got asked to come and talk about it to senators and Congress people. That was what I was doing then. Here, that's at the UN. That's at the UN. Again, you get your thing out, people will see this is the group of 77 developing countries. They had me, and we wrote about trade and fisheries agreements with African countries and Pacific Island countries. So come tell us, what can we get and learn from this and use it for policy? Finally, this is back at home at your playground. This is the prince sending me a letter and other scientists to come and have a chat. How can we protect our ocean? So I go up there. If I tell you one of the things he asked me there, for example, is, Rashid, tell me which countries are actually messing up our ocean. I will invite them here to the palace for dinner, you know. So that's the kind of thing you can get if you do policy relevant work and get it out, let people know about it. Otherwise, nothing happens. So that's part of my interdisciplinary economics. So overall, I'm deeply interested in how economics through integration with other disciplines can be used to help ensure that coastal and ocean resources are sustainably used and conserved, not only for us, but for future generations too, right? I don't think we have any right to empty the ocean and go away and leave our granddaughters and sons with nothing. I gave a talk about this in Washington. Somebody said, oh, why are you worried, Rashid? Maybe the future generation would like to eat jellyfish. I said, oh, so you eat the tuna, the cod, the salmon, and leave them jellyfish? Let them decide. Give them the option to decide. If they choose to eat jellyfish, whilst they have salmon, that's their choice, but don't eat it all out. So that is part of the thing. Now, many of you work on land, so I just wanted to say, Now the ocean is really big. I know you all know this, almost all of you know this. It's 2/3, 70% of the ocean, so this is large. And what I say is that the ocean is too large to ignore, right? It's just too large. Think of it, all of you in this seminar, whether students or professors or researchers or staff, if you were scoring 30% in your grades at high school, you will never be here, right? I mean, if you if you if you if you mess up 70% of whatever you care about, then you are in trouble. So that's the ocean. But it's not only life, it's really useful, whether it's moderating climate, absorbing carbon, giving us food, recreation, you name it. The ocean is very fundamental to our lives and livelihoods. So, but because it's light doesn't mean that we cannot mess it up. We have the technology, we have the population, we have the demand. So we need to know how to do this. So it is too light to ignore. It's not too light to mess up, and it's not too light to take care of. And this is where we come in with conservation and management and policies and governance to try to help us do this. So far, we don't seem to be doing well. This picture summarizes some of the problems with the ocean. We have the overfishing problem. We have climate change and all that goes in ocean acidification, what have you. We have marine debris, we're pumping out plastic and other of our garbage into the ocean as if it's waste. No, there's life in the ocean. We'll kill it if we keep doing this. And you have all the other oil spills as well. So there are lots of issues, and therefore we have a lot of work to do. Now, when we talk about conservation or biodiversity protection, people think we're just doing it only for the sake of biodiversity. And as an economist, I try to highlight the fact that, in fact, for many of us, our love for biodiversity is also because we love people, right? You know, you cannot say you love fishes without first loving fish, because I don't see how, because without the fish, there will be no fishes, there will be no fisheries. So if you really get your mind straight, you know that biodiversity conservation, making sure it is healthy, is what we need to be healthy ourselves, at least in the long run. So this is an example of the consequences. The fish we are overtaking. You can see over time, we are taking more and more overfish, depleted, overexploited stocks. That's what these graphs here, this is from our group here at UVC, this is from the FAO, the direction is clear. More and more we are taking from this part of the graph, you know. And what does it mean? This is a guy says that all the shrimp I get after all the work. And this is forced migration. So if you are in a coastal village and you depend on fish, most of your life depends on fish and the fish is gone, people are people. People don't just sit down and die and starve to hell. People will move. People do move. This is the history of human beings. If life is too difficult in a place, you move. So we have forced migration increasing, and we know, Europeans know about it, right? West Africans jump onto rickety boats, half of them sink in the ocean, sink with half part of our hearts. And those who get to Europe, of course, a lot of Europeans are not happy, the Africans are not happy. This is because we are not taking good care of our environment, and partly at least. So this has human consequences. Now, why do we want to protect the ocean? So here I have a few slides. I'll just go quickly, one by one. One of the things is that marine protection and overfishing. The thing is we are not able to moderate ourselves. All the evidence is there. We overdo things. People, we overdo things. We overfish. We take the big fish first. This is the fishing down marine food web concept of Daniel Pauly. So you start fishing in a water body, you take the most valuable, the biggest fish, you go to the next, to the next, to the next. Before you know, you have jellyfish or mud, actually. So that's one thing we are doing. We need to protect ourselves from ourselves, essentially, by protecting the fish and protecting the marine environment. And once we are taking down the food web, we are also messing up the habitat. See, it was much richer. With time, we are raking things up and just destroying the seamounts, all the great habitats that keep the ocean alive. We're taking it down. So when we are truncating the food web. So to be able to slow this or reduce this, protect the ocean for our own sake, you need marine protection. Climate change is another thing. And here, as the ocean is warming, acidification, sea level rise, less sea ice, all these things are leading to a lot of things, less oxygen in the ocean and so on. So all of these are impacting the ocean. And if this is happening to the physics and the biology, ecology of the ocean, that is going to go to people. So you have all these things happening here, temperature, salinity, hypoxia, acidification is going to affect the animals in the ocean, their communities, and it's going to affect the fish and the fisheries. And usually we look this way, but actually there is this direction also. If we overfish, we take the big fish. Those that help us sequester some of the carbon. What do you do? That also affects these backwards. So protection, we need protection to help us really prepare for climate change. So this is a figure, you cannot read all of it, but it's just telling us all the ways that the rich ocean teeming with life actually is also climate action. There are many, many ways this happens, whether it's through droppings from the fish and all processes. You can see them here. And these slides I'll make available to Tom, so if you want to look further. So what I say here is that fish are like people. If you are healthy, if you are in good shape, and you have a shock, you have some pressure coming on you, like the oxygenation, sea surface temperature rise, you are more capable to withstand the shock if you are in good shape than if you're not. So they're like people, right? Think of COVID. If you don't have pre-existing conditions, you get hit, your chances of surviving much, much higher than if you have pre-existing conditions. So fish and people are not that different, actually. Both of us, we all have life and we behave in many ways the same way. So for this reason, protection can be very valuable as an insurance, as protection against shocks, And also, this is a little graphic we made here, animation. It's a very simple illustration of this. And this we did when we were talking about protecting the high seas. I didn't put much here about protecting the high seas. But essentially, some of us, starting with UBC, but now also with Santa Barbara, Chris Costello's group, we have been saying that, look, it will be biologically, ecologically wise, economically sensible, and socially smart to actually close the whole high seas to fishing. Just close it down into fishing and turn it into a fish bank for the world. So if you're a tuna and you find your way into the high seas, remember, the high seas is those areas that are beyond 200 nautical miles from the coast of countries, okay? The UN decided, UNCLOS, United Nations, what is it called? United Nations Law of the Sea, They made this thing in 1982. Countries have ownership of the waters from their coast to 200 nautical miles. Anything beyond that is considered the high seas, and that's light. It's about 2/3 of the ocean. So in general, there is some management, but not much, So that's what we're talking about. If we were to close that, and only about 5 to 10% of the fish we catch in a year comes from there, right, from fishing in that place. But a lot of the fish actually live within country waters, and a lot also go in and out. There are very few that live all their lives in the high sea. We call them orphans of the ocean. And so we're saying that if you close the high seas, you're not going to lose much, less than 1% of what? Less than 0.5% of what we catch live all their lives in the high seas. That's what we lose. Those that come and go, the large pelagic tunas, when they get in there, they get a break from us. They grow, they prosper, and then they migrate back in. We can catch them cheaply, pump less oxygen in catching them. Small countries can also get to catch them. This is where the equity comes in. And so the more we look at it, the more we find this. But that's another story. Here, I'm just trying to illustrate that if you protect part of the ocean, naturally, biology, ecology is beautiful. Nature is beautiful. If you do that, this part, so you protect this part of the ocean, and you fish here, so you protect here. That's the line. This is where you fish, this is where you protect. With time, what nature does is you are going to get more fish in there because they are not being chased around and caught and all that. So that's the fish bank. And when they get dense enough, again, something that people and animals and living things do, some of them will just say, this is too tight, I gotta move, and then they jump over. Maybe into your boat, right? So you catch them cheaply without burning carbon and so on and so forth. Beautiful. So that's another concept. If you're a fishing entity, the only problem is the fishes are short-term in thinking, then because you have to wait for this mechanism to work. But if you have patience, this always works out beautifully, as I will show very soon. So that's that. So because of this, of course, we got the world thinking and talking, and we got the Convention of Biodiversity, the Aichi targets where they said by 2020, we should protect 10% of the global ocean, all right? And so the question is, how are we doing? And they have their reason for doing it. Mainly it's for protecting biodiversity. And I have statements here about the quality of the protection is important. If you have a marine reserve, you achieve more of the conservation goals and even the long-term fisheries goals than if you allow some activity. It's only natural, right? And so that is what this is saying about the CBD rules. So in this paper we did, this was, have I cited it here? Yeah, this was published in Marine Policy. It's a collaboration. Okay, it's here. It's a collaboration between National Geographic and us and others. And what we did was to evaluate where we were at the time we published this in 2018. And what we saw is that if you look at all the commitments, the proposals, what governments have said they are going to protect, we are looking at around 7% was already either proposed, designated, or implemented. But if you look at that, only 3.6% of the area has been implemented as marine protected area. That's in total. But then when you look at the quality, how well the protection is, actually we found about 2% only. So here you go. By 2018, we're covering 77%, over 7% thereabout, but then if you look deep inside, only 3.6 are implemented on paper. Or you look at the effectiveness of the implementation, you're talking about only 2%. So here you go. There is a long way to go at the time we did it. There has been some effort and speed. For example, in Canada, it was almost not talked about in the government before the Trudeau one because they hated conservation, right? And so the Trudeau people came, we are behind this thing, we signed on and put in a big effort to try to do 10% by the end of this year. So there's some countries that have pushed harder to try to achieve this, but I don't think we are there yet. And 2020 is almost finished, right? Next month. So that's where we are. Meanwhile, the Aichi target, since it was for 2020, there's a big movement and activity now to set a new target for 2030. And this is where the 20 by 30 idea came into place. So people, there's proposal to put in the new CDD target that by 2030, we should conserve at least 30% of coastal and marine areas consisting with both national and international law and based on the best available scientific information. So the target is moving, and it seems like it's going to happen because many countries have already said. I think the UK has also declared this. Canada has definitely, and a number of countries. So there is momentum towards making this the new target when we get there. And this was actually held by a paper, was named, she and our good friend, Callum Roberts, his postdoc, I think. And they did a literature review and showed that most scientists actually, there's convergence around 30% is what we need at least to be able to protect the oceans. So that's where this movement is coming from. So to come and bring you back so very quickly to a list of some of the benefits of marine protection or protection actually. The first one is insurance. I really push the insurance value of marine protection. Economists really like this. Many economists love marine protected areas because they provide insurance. So your ocean is like a portfolio. You can fish everywhere, or if you're smart, you fish parts and protect parts so that we do make mistakes. We get shocked. But when the shocks come, the part you protect from fishing is there. It's likely to give you a cushion and to support you to come back after the shock. So insurance value is a big one. And in my view, actually, the insurance value alone is enough to justify protecting 30%. Then you have recreational values. Many of us have said this: a shark or a whale is more valuable alive than dead. There was an estimate that shows that a shark alive in its lifetime, it can generate up to $1.4 million through recreational ecotourism. People go in just to watch the shark. But if you kill it and just take the fins and make a soup, maybe you get $140 in the bowl, right? So there are good reasons why, economic reasons why to protect. And Palau does this actually. Palau has closed, 80% of their waters to fishing, 20% for local fishers, and then they generate a lot of income before COVID from tourists who want to go to a place where it is green and blue, for that matter. And the fisheries, as I said, is really a struggle between the medium and the long term, the short term and the medium and long term. If you have patience, it's always all the models I've looked at, you get benefits. But if you close it today, you want your fish today, then there's going to be an issue. Carbon value, I mentioned that, option value to future generations, climate resilience value, and the equity stuff. If you really manage well, you can actually reduce part of the huge unfair distribution in the world that we face. So now I come to the study. Well done. Anthony is in the audience. It's a piece of work he led us. There was over about 100 scientists, economists and non-economists alike, conservation people, ocean people, some of them from Cambridge and Oxford and around the world. The 100 scientists really doing one big report. It was quite amazing, and Anthony did an amazing job to get all of us to kind of contribute in a way and get this report. And to me, I see this as a mini IPCC for marine protection. And the basic idea in it is really captured by these three simple equations. Economics can be simple, actually, until you get to the details. You get to the details, then you know it's not simple. But at the level of concept, it's quite easy. How do you do cost-benefit analysis? Number one, equation one, you just have to count the values or the benefits of either a project, a policy, or a program, right? In this case, we want to protect 30% of the ocean ocean and land. Actually, this report is not only ocean, it's ocean and land. I just concentrate on the ocean. You want to protect 30%? By 2030, what will be the cost and the benefits? So equation one here, you just count your benefits. So year one, year two, all the way to year two. So, and this is why I say when you get into the details, this is tough. I mean, counting these benefits is not easy because it's not only what you get by selling the fish or the things you can sell, but it's also the non-market values, all the regulating values, all the values that we don't sell in the market, but they are amazingly important and valuable. So it's not as easy as the equation says. The next thing you do is you count all the costs, right? I just told you that if you close a part of the ocean where people are fishing, they will have to stop fishing. There will be an immediate loss in catch, except they go somewhere else to fish or whatever. But if you are taking that effort out, but that is a short term. So you need to count the costs all through the time horizon of your project to get a more informative analysis. And then you find the difference between them and you do all the discounting in order to get your net benefit from the exercise here. So my advice to those who are really keen is if you haven't seen this report, please get hold of it. Whether you work on land or ocean doesn't really matter because they're all in here. And this is the engine, the economic engine that was used to come to some results. Yeah, so what are the key findings in this report? The first thing we came up is that actually protecting 30% of the ocean by 2030 is doable and it is affordable. That's the key point. It's affordable because it will cost the world only about 0.16% of global GDP, about $140 billion. So when I really want to, when I'm talking either in Silicon Valley or in Washington or New York, I say, you know what, 6 families in the US or maybe even in the UK can fund this, right? You know, so this is not a lot. Don't ask Rashid to fund it because I don't have billions, but I know that this is not too difficult for the whole at large if we want to do it. It's not The second point is that actually it is good investment. You know, it is good investment. So it's not like you are throwing this $140 billion. They actually bring you return. They bring us value. And our estimate is that at least 1 to 5. So you spend a pound and you get £5 back. You know, so by any measure, this is good investment. Now, so that's the thing. 2 things here: affordable and good investment. The next question is, where do you find the money? People always ask us this question. What we see when you look at the literature, there is a lot of public money that is being used to undermine the environment, to undermine the ocean. If you think about the fisheries alone, we estimate that the world gives subsidies to the tune of $35 billion a year. That's about 30, 35, 40% of the gross revenue of the sector. Just think about that. If you're doing a business and somebody is dropping 30% of your gross revenue, okay, if you are the one doing the business, that's good for you. But that tells you that the business will not be viable without this subsidy, or if it will be, they're just taking away taxpayer money and putting it in their pocket. So there's a lot of disaster fisheries. According to the OECD, oil and gas, the sector gets about $4.7 trillion a year of subsidies. 4.7 trillion. That is over 6% of global GDP. So there you go again, right? I mean, this is crazy. So what we're saying is there's a lot of funds, public funds, taxpayer money that is in the system. If only we can redirect this and turn them away from harming the environment and therefore harming people. It's just a question of time. If you take down the environment, you are taking down yourself, your community. It's just a question of time. You pump out CO2, you increase climate change, your cities are going to be flooded more than before. There will be more hurricanes, and so on and so forth. So this idea that the economy and the environment are independent, I don't know where we got that idea from really. So there are resources there that we can redirect if we have the guts and the political will to do so. Implication is that, the study shows that doing this actually could be a boost to the global economy. Yeah. So that is essentially the basics from the report. It's a big report. I'm just summarizing here, and hopefully I got the whole thing. So now let me talk about how to get the money even more deeply. I talk about money already there that is used negatively as far as conservation is concerned, which we can redirect and improve things. But then there is this new body put together by the Prime Minister of Norway. The Prime Minister of Norway, she's here, Erna Solberg. She's here. It's very interesting. This lady, actually, when she was doing her degree, she did sociology, I believe, at the University of Bergen in Norway. I was also doing my economics there on the same campus. So it's interesting. She's now the Prime Minister, and she put together this panel called the high level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, and then got 13 other heads of states to agree with her and to be on the panel. And their goal is to help the world find a way to sustain the ocean economies, to have ocean economies that are sustainable. So that's the heads of states plus the UN envoy here, Mr. Peter Thompson. So that's it. The Canadian Prime Minister is there. There are 3 African presidents from Ghana, Namibia, and Kenya. And is the Indonesian Prime Minister, Japanese. So this is really heads of states from all over the world. Almost every continent, I believe, is represented here. So they set out about 16 groups, scientists, to do studies that will underpin their work. And I was asked to work with 22 other colleagues from all over the world, really from all continents, to do this report on ocean finance. So the question we got is, how much finance goes in there? Is it adequate? If it is not adequate, why? What are the barriers? And after identifying the barriers, what are the how do we move forward, right? So that is what is in this report. It was launched on October 22nd. It's on the website of the Ocean Panel, so you can find it there. And these are my co-authors from 22 of them. These are some of the high-level messages we got. The ocean economy is a cornerstone of the global economy, contributing trillions, 1.5 trillion according to the OECD, rising to 3 billion in short order. Despite this, we found only about 1% of the ocean economy that goes back to try to protect the ocean, which is crazy. 1% is too low. And with climate change, pollution, overfishing, putting mounting pressure on the ocean, it is crucial to protect and manage human activities on the ocean. And to do that, we need finance. So that is the kind of conclusions we got to. And this is the subsidies thing, and I already talked about this amazing. That is a shortfall for MPS alone in the Mediterranean, about $800 million here. And so the more funds need to go in there. 1 to 5, the benefits, so the economics is clear, and investing in effectively managed MPS can increase habitat protection, ecosystem resilience, and all the other benefits I mentioned. So there are barriers. I won't get time to go through all of them in detail. I'm just pointing you to the article. And then we came up with a number of actions to plug the financial gap. For example, set up and implement new common guidelines and principles. People just don't know how to invest in ocean activities because it's more risky. They are not used to it. And so on and so forth. Capacity building in the developing world is big. Creating a supportive and inclusive enabling environment that allows everybody to participate, women, youth, coastal people to be able to participate in this. And so we go on and on and on. And you got to boost new approaches to insurance. For example, we found out that insurance companies actually fund illegal fishing vessels, which is crazy. We got to stop that and support only activities that are sustainable. All right, so I think I'll just stop here. Time is running out, so we can get some Q&A. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Sumaila, for a fascinating talk. We'll now open it up to questions. So the way that we're going to do this is, if you have a question, please raise your hand on the participants list. If you don't know how to do that, turn on your camera and wave at me, or post a question in the chat box, and I can link it forward. Does anyone have any questions to start off with? Okay, well, I have one that I would like to start off with. So over the kind of past 30 years, we've seen a big increase in the use of aquaculture as a way of supporting fisheries, and a sort of flattening off on capture fisheries in the ocean, which has obviously translated some of the impacts to coastal areas and particularly coastal communities. Wondered what your thoughts were in terms of whether you see that trend continuing, and whether you think in some ways that's been beneficial for capture fisheries, or whether it's had further knock-on effects?
Mm. Yeah, so agriculture is a very interesting addition. It's been growing. I think it started really growing in the 80s, you know. But agriculture has been with us for centuries. I mean, Chinese and Egyptians and others in Europe have actually been fish farming for a long time, but not at the scale we're seeing these days. It's been big growth, and I think my own take on this is agriculture has a role to play. We just need to be, as everything is almost like wild fish, if we push it to the limit, we need to be very careful how we do it. And my general take actually is that we are a bit over optimistic of what agriculture can do for us, you know, and we are over optimistic. And why do I say that? I remember I gave a talk, I don't know whether it's in China or in the US, one of the places. And I talked about conservation, and this guy comes in and says, why do you worry? I say, why not? So we can we can farm all the fish the world needs in one high-rise building in Holland, he told me, right? So this is, and I think this is extreme, but there's a lot of that mentality. Oh, you can forget your wild fish. We're gonna farm everything. The thing, what I told him is, you know, the high-rise building, is it the high-rise building will produce all the inputs you need, all the water? A lot of the fish we farm, you need fish from the wild to actually feed them, salmon, for example. So you need anchovies. So it's not completely decoupled. So the more you do, the more you need input. But we can do this cleverly. I mean, there are fish that are not carnivores that are farmed. I mean, the tilapias of the world and the carps and so on. The thing is, the rich part of the world doesn't really enjoy eating those fishes, not yet. So yeah. So bottom line, I think there's a role if we do it wisely and cleverly. But if we just go, just like we went with big boats to go after wild fish, if we do the same, we end up. Because the environment, remember, agriculture is within the environment. We cannot escape that in the long run. And so, yeah, that's my take on aqua.
Okay, thank you very much. So I see Andrew Barnford has his hand up. So Andrew, if you'd like to go.
Thanks, Rashid. That was a fantastic talk. Nice to see you again. A question, you move in high circles with heads of state and so on. I'm struck when you look at a few recent papers which look at how far sectors like fishing are controlled by very small numbers of companies. The proportion of all the catch or all the aquaculture for that matter, that's in the hands of, 10 boards around the world. I was wondering if how far you've been able to have conversations with some of those players, and whether you think there's hope for them having a longer term view, as well as important people like the Prime Minister of Norway.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question, Andrew, and good to see you too. I mean, yeah. So this comes into our work in a number of ways, and so I could touch on this. And your point about most of the big production is in the hands of a few, whether it's wild or agriculture. Actually, it's worse for agriculture. If you look at agriculture, 60% of global production is China. Okay, 60% is China, 80% is Asia, and the rest of us share the 20%. So that tells you. So that's even at the national level, it's highly concentrated. Wild fisheries are less concentrated, but it's still the same. Companies, if you control everything. Agriculture, maybe 6 companies. In BC, we know that 6 companies control it, and most of them are originated from Norway, actually. So one country. All right. So we have that. How do I deal with this? In the debate on subsidies, I've really tried to raise this at the WTO, and even Prince Charles actually quoted some of the work we have done before on subsidies. And one of the things we have come up with is trying to say how much of the total subsidies the government goes to large scale industrial versus small scale. And you will be shocked to see what we found. 80% of the total subsidy of 35 billion goes to large-scale industrial fishing boats. So I tell them this, 80%. Usually they tell me, oh, we want to work, we want to help our poor, our small fishing communities. I've been told this by Indonesia as well as by Canadian members of parliament. And now we show them, hey, guys, you are not really, this money doesn't go to those you say they're going to. And this has a huge consequence in terms of distribution, because the small scale fishing boats, that is where the communities are, that is where developing countries are, that is where women fishers are, the youth are. So all these people are disadvantaged. We use our tax money to disadvantage the groups that are already disadvantaged. This is outrageous. So I bring this in my conversation, and usually they get shocked, especially the gender dimension that we brought in recently. I mean, people say, oh my God, so we're making gender inequality even worse. Yes, you are. So I think the more we bring this into the discussion of the science and the economics and highlight how outrageous what we're doing is, I think the better you get the attention of the powerful, if you like.
Okay, we have a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one I'm seeing is from April Bagwell. April, do you want to ask your question directly?
Hi, yeah, thanks again for everyone else. Thanks for the really interesting talk. And so you talked about, investment from or redistributing investment in the public sector, but in the private sector, are you actually seeing increased pressure for investment in marine protection, right, with all the managing like competing interests and things like that with, say, aquaculture or shipping and those types of companies? And with that, if there's not, are there current incentives that could help with that, and or do they just not exist at this stage?
Yeah. So private investment, there's been a big push to get the private sector to participate in investing in protection also. And one of the things we do is to try to show them the benefits of doing that, because really, if you think of the private sector and the ocean, there are three buckets of possible investments that they can engage in, or that we need actually. One is there are things you can do and generate as a private company and generate enough returns, enough profit to be competitive in the market. So for example, ecotourism, if done well, the returns can be quite high and competitive. Those are the easy ones for the private sector. They will go in if they have the information, if they understand the risk and so on. So that's the easy one. Then you have investments that on themselves cannot generate market competitive returns. And this is where you have an issue, because the private sector will not go in there, everything being equal. So here, recently, we are seeing a lot of innovation in this zone. So you have things like blended finance coming in, where the private sector or philanthropic organizations, foundations work together with private businesses and government actually to put together investment instruments to help the private sector to participate and make the returns to them competitive. So you have blended finance and so on. And this is happening all over. It's really interesting. I saw examples in South Africa and in Ghana and in Asia, in Bangladesh and so on, where you have this kind of blending taking place. The third set of investment that are the more difficult ones are those that don't generate any private returns, but they are very valuable for us all. And this is where we need public funding, people tell me, oh, we have to bring the private sector because there's no public funding. And I said, come on, public funding is not fixed and concrete. If we want, we can advance more public funding, right? I mean, and then in that report, I tried to put this in, it didn't pass through the reviewers. I said, look, the ocean economy is 1.5 trillion. And in general, we tax on average globally 26% of the GDP average in all countries. So I say, how about we say we take 10% of the GDP generated by the ocean to plow it back into the ocean to create the environment, the incentive structure, so the private sector can play sustainably, right? 10%. That will give us 150 billion right there. And but the reviewers didn't like this much. I still had it there, but I didn't have the 10%. That was what they didn't like. So yeah, there are ways we can increase public funding. We can bring private sector public funding in a blended way, and then get more. And this is beginning to happen. Okay, it looks okay.
I think we have time for one more question. So then the next question was from Stefan Opel. Stefan, do you want to ask your question directly?
Yeah, thank you. That was a great talk. You mentioned in the beginning that it would be fairly good to simply close all the international waters, all the high seas for fishing. And that would solve a lot of problems, but not incur a great cost, because we actually only fish a small proportion of our global harvest in the international seas. How could that be enforced, and by whom, and who pays for it?
Yeah. This is a fantastic question, and I get this question a lot. I think, and I have two kinds of answers. When I want to be a bit naughty, I say, who am I? What do I know, right? I say, I just did my analysis and I saw this. I just inform the world, and smarter people will find ways to actually implement this, right? And it's a joke, but it's also true, right? We need, first of all, you find an idea, you just say, hey, this is what we found. And then that can generate a lot of activity to help us implement. So that's one. But actually, more seriously, I think technology has an important role here to help us do this, because it's a very large area. And so you need to find clever ways to monitor this. I think the last time that big tsunami hit us, from my reading, I understand now we have regional stations and hotspots of tsunami, just to give us a warning, early warning signals if it's coming. So it's that kind of thinking. We could have stations around the high seas with enough technology to read off and see if somebody is fishing illegally, if we implement this. And actually, if you close the whole high seas to fishing, in some funny way, it's actually easier to manage, because then if you see a fishing boat there, you know what they're doing, right? So that is also there. Now, how do you pay for it? Partly it's technology. We can leverage technology. Satellite technology is getting cheaper. The Global Fishing Watch is already doing amazing stuff. They're able to read numbers of fishing vessels fishing, especially in the high seas, because they are big boats. They're able to do this. That will reduce the cost. And actually, at the moment, how much are we spending? I have a master's students, and we're beginning to do this. We are beginning to calculate the cost of maintaining all the RFMOs or whatever we have now that's supposed to help us manage the high seas. What is the cost? You may be shocked. Maybe there's already enough ineffective money there that could do the job. So there are many ways we could do this. I'm optimistic. If we decide we want to do it, the world, I mean, we have many ways to do this. All right. Thank you for the question. And thank you for the opening summary you gave about what I said on the high seas. That was well done. Thanks.
I think that's all the time we have for questions. So sorry for anyone we didn't get to. Before I wrap up, I just want to draw your attention to next week's talk. It's at the same time on Wednesday, the 2nd of December, which is Paul Ferraro. So what a better way to celebrate the end of the UK lockdown and our ability to go Christmas shopping with a talk. And it is re-evaluating the relationships between biodiversity and ecosystem function with methods from social scientists. And with that, I'd just like to once again thank Professor Sumaila for a fantastic seminar, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. All the best.